dear colleagues, for wonderful discussions. I'm sure that you will be a little bit hard, but of course 15 minutes for hearing the report in an interactive way, I'm sure that will be also challenging for us. This is why I'll kindly start with the first breakout rooms, which was moderated and facilitated by UNICA EduLAB, Business Collaboration and Innovation Chief, Specialist and Visiting Researcher in Educational Robotics, School of Educational Sciences, Tallinn Universities, and also very important, UNICA will take role in EduLab for moderating an important glossary task which are assigning for the next few decades. Thank you very much, Anika, but in this moment you are telling about the barriers in building micro-credentials philosophy. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Romiță. And what can I say? We had a wonderful team. We had a lot of co-creation happening there, and I just tried to shortly summarize. But after my overview, I'm also going to share our Google Jamboard link on the chat. So please feel free to add your opinions, your suggestions, your ideas, because 3 months we would really like to give you as a short report the preliminary version of the glossary needed for progressing further with micro-credentials. But now the results. First, we took it philosophically. So who is the customer, or who is the end user of these micro-credentials? Whether we should just produce them and give them, or whether we should consider whom we are going to teach these micro-credentials. And there was also some different examples how the things are at United States. And now there's a question whether, as a European universities, we should only focus on making money with these micro-credentials, so they are fully commercial. We read also the explanation of European Commission that we should help lifelong learners and employees to progress in their career path. But what about our students? Maybe they also want to educate themselves using them, and in that case still the credits are needed, and maybe they can be part of their learning path. But as we were extremely productive also on the Jamboard, I just pick up some more ideas here. You can check. So we try to map, and actually the first question occurred, how long is the short course, whether there is a meaning of these credits, and also whether they should be in national language, in international language. And the best idea just came up. We should have a platform, a common platform where we can put all our micro-credentials, all internationals, local and regional students and adult learners can apply, because as they are so short and so specific, there may be not so many cultural differences. If we teach the cyber security or something that kind of, it can't be so different, or sustainable development or other things. Now, as you see, there are a lot of opportunities we can create when promoting micro-credentials, and especially relying on our keynote speaker. We shouldn't forget teaching and learning. We have a lot of knowledge to transfer as a teachers, and the micro-credentials can be the way how we can transfer our knowledge to our industry, to our societal actors, so our societies will grow and the European strength will, and our capacity will be strengthened, but in a scientific way. Because although there is mentioned that commercial institutions can also give micro-credentials, but whether they have the scientific background, whether they have the scientific evidence, so our competitive edge as a universities having this researcher background, conducting the research, collecting the evidence, was also brought out. Now, when checking this barriers part, it's also written on the screen. Yes, definitely the language part, because it's so easy to teach it in only national language, or only in English, or only in French, or only in Spain. But whether does it make sense that we are going to duplicate our micro courses, our micro modules, our micro credentials, whether we could benefit from doing it together and just complement, giving the complementary value. Maybe we should create a value chain, and maybe every university could create first this type of micro modules. We have the highest expertise, as our universities usually have the highest expertise in something. And what could be now the last step, or our next step, whether there is a need of such a glossary and definitions and best practices? Yes, it's definitely there, but I think that creating the glossary could be just the first step of creating this common understanding, how we could progress further with this European, or at least UNICA EduLab wide platform, sharing our knowledge and our first steps. Even if the policymakers are not ready, I think that we have to be ready, because as a higher education institutions, we are responsible for the development of society. So we have to be ready, and we can start. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share the link of this Jamboard to the chat. Feel free to add your remarks there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Janika, for a very insightful briefing with us. It's so interesting to see how many facets are covering micro-credentials from the perspective of European degree construction or designing. Thank you very much. I'm going to the second, breakout rooms, joint multiple degrees, moderated and facilitated by Andrius Uzlanavičius, Head of Study Office of Vilnius Universities. Thank you very much, Andrius, for doing a great job in a context where linguistical and sometimes semantical acception terminology was more or less putting an accent on difficulties in this. Thank you very much, Andrew. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Romiță. So yeah, I'll just start presenting our Jamboard as well. So we started with the terminology, and what exactly do we mean by? Oops, I'm sorry. Do you see my screen? I cannot see that.
We do. It's okay.
So yeah, it's a pity that these 45 minutes just flied, and we didn't have chance to go even more deep in the discussion. But we shared quite a lot of ideas, and we started with the terminology, and everyone agreed that we don't know what do we mean by saying European degree, even though it's discussed everywhere now in every conference, and everyone just jumps to how to implement it. And actually, we started implementing it as pilots, and then seeing, okay, let's see what we'll have in the nearest future. But we definitely need to create an awareness of what do we mean by it, and hopefully the research of or the report from European Commission is very well weighted, and we'll see how can we define it. Of course, we had some definitions starting from that European degree is just a new label for joint degree, and it's completely the same, but also to seeing other values in it as the maybe more common understanding on quality assurance of these types of degrees. That added value is in flexibility for students to design their own studies and choose their pathways, curricula and content for professors. It's an added value for professors, for our communities, because we can share resources more intensely. And of course, it's an added value for us as universities and for our graduates, because it can it has a very large potential to have an international recognition and awareness. But also we need to be very clear that not to start this division between European degrees and national degrees and say that these are of better quality, these are not, and also it's always the question of is it only the degree of the alliances, or other universities shouldn't be left out as well. And of course the common agreement is that no one should be left out and would have to be able to implement these type of degrees. And also, of course, we discussed challenges that we are facing while implementing European degrees. There are quite a few of them, but most of them are related to international, national, and then university-wide regulations, because the main conclusion here would be that there is a huge need to harmonize this national, international, national, and university-wide regulation. But of course, it's not only the regulation, but also the culture inside of university, and we all face it that okay, we are presented with challenges from the regulation of national perspective, but also we are presented with the challenges of some cultural ways of working, of presenting and preparing degrees, and also a lot of discussion I needed to overcome them, and to be able to create a program that would everyone would approve of, and the process to create the process that everyone would approve of. So yeah, we have quite a funny situation, I would say, because all the ministries, quality assurance agencies agree that it's very important to have such collaborations between universities, and that European degrees are a good thing, and that the alliances are a good thing, but actually no one takes action to make changes in national regulation. And I think most of the countries are still at the same place that they were before the alliances started, and European approach, even though it was presented to us in 2015, but still do not work in a lot of countries. So more and more discussions are needed in order to have this harmonization that I've mentioned, and maybe some of the solutions. Of course, we are supposed to have much more support from European Commission, from ENQA and EQUA. I think they're trying to help us, but still everything is regulated nationally, so we have this problem. Maybe one of the solutions would be European Quality Assurance Agency, the separate agency that would help us with that. That was just one of the ideas, but still, I mean, we need to have some kind of a cap, and then to harmonize it in our regulation, in our national regulations, and hopefully will be heard in our ministries. But even though we have a lot of challenges, we haven't defined it. I think the common agreement in our group was that it's a step forward, and we are very happy to be able to participate in this implementation. So thank you. I'll share the board as well. Please be free feel free to add any ideas you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrews. It's so important to talk about the awareness, and more than others to start our work, UNICA, on coordinating the repository, terminologies, explanations. Sometimes it's very important to have in mind conceptual perspective and framework for explaining new definitions and new entries in the terminology in higher education area during this time. Thank you very much, Andrews. And now, last but not the least, the third breakout rooms, European Universities Alliance is the piloting arenas for the future of European degrees, facilitated by Lucia Venerini, Division Director of Academic Affairs, University of Tübingen, and one of the most active participants and promoter of the new program inside cities. Lucia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Romiță, and thanks also for the honor having the opportunity to work with all these experts in our circle here. As we realized in our breakout room, we had 24 participants. Most of them are actually members of an alliance. You know, that was great. And we could, I think, surmise that we are already on our way of building piloting arenas within our university alliances. I think we would have needed at least another quarter of an hour. But what we saw, we had 7 examples, you know, of pilots, and I can't really call all of them pilots, as we had various stages. We had joint programs already running, some of them, you know, in the planning stage. And another interesting experience from double degrees, and even an invitation to all of us to be part of a new degree that was in the making, but also what Janica said, you know, all hang on, can't see the name now. Anyway, my other colleague from the breakout room, all the experiences you had, problems with the framework, challenges, and quite a few of us therefore said, okay, to facilitate piloting, maybe it's easier not to start with an entire program, as that takes quite a time, maybe 2 to 3 years to have an entire joint degree. So let's do it step by step. And we had various examples where people started with joint courses, modules, and then smaller programs. For example, within CIVIS, we had the micro programs where our students have 15 ECTS at the end of the day when they followed through the program. And I think what we all realized, that mostly the legal challenges were mentioned, but on the other hand, how rewarding working together is, and that the first step to have an added value for our students, a new learning experience in a European environment, is that all of us, we have to learn from each other and learn what is the culture at each university, how does everyone go about curriculum design, and not deter and not think you have to have the how do you say, to have the ideal solution right from the start. It's a process. And the experiences from our workshop, hang on, I haven't shared my screen. Here you can see, you know, that how many people are already part of an alliance and who has experience. And then we saw a bit of what the various experiences are. And the last bit we didn't discuss actually was, what does everyone think where we are at the moment within our piloting arenas? You know, if you have a look at the entire process of what the European university alliances want to achieve, where are we? Are we still at the beginning, in the middle, at the end? We are certainly not at the end. And I don't think we are at the beginning anymore, right? But we are in the process, in the middle of reaching, and how do I stop it? We are in the middle of not only having pilots, but sharing experiences we gathered, and also of having an opportunity like here with UNICA of sharing within the various alliances, so that we can see what solution did you have, how did you go about, and also encourage the alliances who haven't already started with a pilot to do so. And I think that's the outcome of our workshop, really, you know, to not be deterred. And we agree with everything that the other 2 workshops said. Yes, the framework still hasn't been set up by the European Commission, by the European Union, but as our keynote speaker said, we are higher education institutions and we have ways and means, you know, to do these things which is other except for waiting what the European Commission tells us to do. And I think this is one of the outcomes working together with 10 universities, 8 universities, 6 universities. Romiță, I think that's where I like to finish, that to say, you know, we have the means, even though the legal framework is not there, and not be deterred. So we are on our way.
Yes, I fully agree with you. Some discussions also in the breakout rooms have been focused on the same barrier, sometimes legal barriers and sometimes regulations at the national level could also influence the development of the new programs as well. But the awareness will be more important. And another conclusion, some glossaries in this context, and EduLab, we are starting this initiative for developing a glossary for the conceptual analysis of the new terms which are circulating in this moment in the European higher education arena. It's just pressing us, and I'm sure that we are solving this program. Thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you very much, dear colleagues from the breakout rooms, and also for your management of the time. And now looking to the agenda, I'm just try as a moderator where I want to exploit a little bit and to skip some small breaks, if you agree with me, for the continuity. This is the matter which is counting on my side, a very important one. And allowed me to introduce and to start the last part of our event. As you have seen, the event was more or less interactively oriented, and we have the privilege now to introduce in the panel discussions two very important, thank you very much, Lucia. You have the Jamboard shared with us now, and all the people could also take advantage from the ideas written down there. And I like it very much to introduce our special guests as panelists in this moment. On my list is Lucian CIOLAN, the Vice-Rector of the University of Bucharest, in charge with development projects, lifelong learning, and Lucian is also an important figure in the European arena, European research arena, an important member of the European Educational Research Association Council. And Lucian more or less is the important contributor in developing a continuing professional development inside cities by promoting innovative pedagogies and a lot of trainings activities coordinated by Lucian's team, and also a very good and charming speaker, as I previously told about Livius Matei. And the second important invited contributor is Nadia Fernandez de PINEDO. Nadia is Associate Professor at the Department of Economic Analysis, and she holds a PhD from the University of País Vasco in Spain and postdoctoral research in the Warwick Universities. But Nadia is more or less for us an important contributor, as Lucian it is, for developing a program inside CIVIS, and we can offer in together with Lucia two important examples on how to design and promote a new European program which has been based on the micro-credentials philosophy. My dear colleagues, Lucian and Nadia, unfortunately, the third guest, Justyna GODLEWSKA-SZYRKO, unfortunately, she had a very severe illness problem in this morning, and she's just kindly asked for excuse. I'm sure that all the three, including me, we are just managing this important task. I would like to start the reflection and to invite the guests to reflect on two important questions raised more or less also from the dynamics of the breakout room discussions. One of them is related to the intent of the European approach with a view to match the alliance's needs in this moment, and if you consider that some minimum common requirements will be upgraded or included into the research based focusing area in this context, because Lucian is an expert on this field, and I would kindly ask how could we enrich the reflection taking into account the research products, and for Nadia, what are the main obstacles encountered in the development of the new joint programs, and which solutions could be proposed so far? My dear colleagues, the floor is yours. Lucian, would you like to start?
Okay, thank you very much, Romiță, and hello everyone here. That's actually a challenging question, especially after the keynote of Liviu Matei, who was mentioning or bringing into our attention that somehow the articulation of European alliances is bringing back, if you wish, the focus on education, giving us the task to be responsible first of all to our students, and not being or trying to be isolated in the shape of a research institute and so on. It doesn't mean that there is a fight here, although sometimes it is, between education and research missions of the universities. But if I look to the experiences of the European alliances up to now, what is really new and what is really changed in comparison with other cooperation projects that we have had in the past, it is this commitment to build up together better learning outcomes for our students. And of course, building these learning outcomes, it should be an undertaking that it is research-based. And if we talk about research, I think that from this very initial stage of building up European alliances, we should start researching if we are going in the right direction. I hope that with this process, which is a huge one, we will be a little bit more attentive to doing analysis from this very early stage, and to do research and calibrate our interventions and our decisions at European level, and avoid the huge amount of criticism that was especially in the first phase of the Bologna process. Well, it is still now going on. But my invitation in this regard would be, okay, let's balance education and research, not giving up one for the other, but let's use research not just to build up better teaching and learning programs for our students, which is of course a priority, but let's use also research as a meta-reflective tool to analyze our pathways. Liviu Matei was also talking about a reflective practice here, and not taking it for granted, not criticizing per se, but also not taking it for granted. And I believe that this reflective approach means to use our minds and our skills as researchers to research our own process of transformation. You know, building up this new identity for European university is a huge challenge, and I really believe that we should not be taken by the wave of change without reflecting each step seriously and learning our lessons in the whole process. And I will stop now, and if the case, we can come back. But I think that maybe it's the time now for Nadia to have an intervention as well.
Thank you very much, Lucian. I really very much agree with your position related to the balance between the research and using research for validating the models of the future development. That's so important. And the other important idea was the transformational perspective of what's happening now it's very important not to following a model, but to try to transform deeply our institutions, our practices, and of course, mentalities as well. Thank you very much. Nadia, if you like to react or to add some other points on this.
No, thank you very much. I agree that nowadays higher education is facing many challenges, and higher education should provide, you know, an educational offer really adapt to these changes, and especially to the demand of the labor market. And I think modularization is one of these. It's perfect to create these educational programs that can change in real time, tailoring, for example, a degree to the requirements of the employers and allowing a more gentle learning curve. The problem is we need flexibility inside our institutions and in the frame of the European Union. And for instance, one of the challenges in each of our institutions is how really to tackle this flexibility. What we have seen in CIVIS, for example, with these two micro programs we are piloting now, as Lucia was mentioned, is what we are seeing is we are starting from zero, basically. And with we have two examples, one created from the scratch, on another based on existing or pre-existing courses. But one of the main conclusions is, as a result, in both cases, the collaboration between the teacher has increased, and the idea of creating joint courses has been strengthened. And I think it's really important to highlight it, because there has been a sharing of knowledge with a common vision based on the transversality. So it has been raised spontaneously. So I think we have a real opportunity to collaborate among institutions and to collaborate among academics and share not only the teaching part, but also the research part, as Lucian was mentioning. And I think these alliances are strategic for the European Union, because even if we don't know to think about it, but we have to compete now, not only at the national level, but the international level. So it's important to decide what type of offer we want to launch in the market, but not only from the autonomous point of view of each nation, of each institution, we have to think bigger. And I think that's a real challenge, not only to adapt to the labor market, but to adapt to a new environment, which is much more global. It's not local anymore. That's why I think the modularization offers a great opportunity. And I think Prof. Lucia could talk a bit more about the experience, for example, in one of the micro programs, because we have one of global awareness, or the other one on civic engagement. You know, both topics are really broad, but at the same time interest a greater audience.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Very interesting idea, and you already sent a message to Lucia for support idea related to the experiences already collected and validated inside CIVIS. Lucia, if you like to add something.
Yes, with pleasure. I mean, Nadia just mentioned challenges, and beforehand we were talking about challenges in higher education, right? But we can't look only at challenges within our universities and higher education institutions, but we have to look at the challenges that our entire societies are faced with, and that on a global level. We are not only local anymore, but what we do locally has a result on what is happening globally and the other way around. And so these challenges of our societies have to be addressed in teaching and learning as well. And on the skills, our students not only are supposed to sort of learn at university, but are supposed to experience, right? And therefore, these skills like flexibility and critical thinking and the reflectiveness of what am I doing here and what impact does it have, and what impact does our university have on society, and how does sort of, for example, society work with university in order not to be a part any longer the so-called ivory towers anymore, and therefore we thought of having something like a transdisciplinary micro programs, right, where our students on the one hand have the theoretical background but also a practical experience. So our programs on the one hand have a framework with various parts for our students, and the added value on the one hand is that within the framework students can be flexible and follow their own interests as well where the topics are concerned, and on the other hand also, as we sort of, have options from all our 3 universities and also co-create new courses, that they get an insight of not only what various innovative pedagogies mean and how various teachers sort of, reflect on these, but also on how, for example, what does service learning mean? How can we go into our society and together with them, being equals, work for them, present them with solutions which they can integrate within their organization. And so our students sort of apply theory into practice in a community context. And that's, for example, the micro program Civic Engagement, where they also have this internship possibility, and at the end a reflection on everything they experienced and learned, which is newly created and was started during the winter term, right? And the other one on global awareness, where we have the same 3 universities and have a sort of also a challenge of what is globalization, what facets are there, what are cross-border processes, and even there you have student processes as well, research projects, and in the end all of our students have a new experience, and we hope that like that as European universities we have students who can be part of a sort of solution for the future challenges of our societies. Maybe so far.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lucia. It was very insightful. Dear participants, you are welcoming, invited to write your questions on the chat. We are going on with the second round of questions, but it's important to know that if you like to add a question, please do it directly on the chat. Lucian, taking into account your large experience in the field of consultancy and capacity building program for different European institutions, and being a promoter of the new ideas in this field of educational policy, do you think that will be students, because they will be the beneficiary of this structure, the students will be involved in the process of designing, or it's important to keep the balance between having the feedback of our students, and they are becoming the last beneficiary of our changing in the curricula. And the second question linked to this one will be the process of building a new curricula, how to say, an important way for promoting another pedagogies in this context, which will be dedicated to our students, because it's important. You have been in charge with innovative pedagogy area, and that's so important. But innovative pedagogy is not for the teachers or for the staff itself, but also for our students. What do you see, Lucian?
Well, I'll try to give some integrated answer to both ideas. I would start with the students, and I strongly believe that they should be part of the process and not just the beneficiaries of the process. Liv, you mentioned that there is a very top-down approach when it comes to the decision making. I think that it is okay for the moment. Otherwise, I don't believe that it would ever start if it wouldn't be this top-down cascade. But now that the ball is moving, I think that the ball should move with all the stakeholders inside and not leaving anyone outside, because otherwise, especially if we lose the key stakeholder, which is the students, we may find ourselves in a new world, but without our partners there. So students should be, and they are already, you know, at least in our consortium, students are already involved in different kind of even decision-making consultative bodies, but I believe that when it comes about changing the curriculum, they should also, or they could also contribute to the co-creation of curriculum. It's not an easy task, but nevertheless, it should be understood by all the stakeholders that building up a new educational systems, it is the joint responsibility of everyone. It's not just about a new delivery system here. It's about a system in which every stakeholder should understand what is their role, what is their responsibility, and what is their contribution to make. And, you know, looking a little bit to the pedagogies, I think that now we were all afraid in the last years that we are fragmenting too much the curriculum with small bits and pieces, and we are losing the meaning of the degrees. But in my opinion, giving a different granularity to the curriculum makes it flexible, allows the curriculum and the universities in general to open up more towards the lifelong learning and non-traditional participants to different kind of courses, giving them access to knowledge without being enrolled as traditional students. And it is also forcing our minds, and here it is also the pandemic that forced a little bit more. It is forcing our mind to find the way to keep engagement at a high level. I think that for the students, there are a lot of benefits around, but it is our task as academics to explain those benefits and to make them part of the whole process in order to gain ownership and gain a sense of belonging into these new structures that we are building. We are talking about a new European university with a different label, with different locations. And, you know, building up sense of belonging from one university in one country to one European university with 6, 7, 8 campuses around Europe, that's the challenge ahead. And I think that we could not answer it in another ways than being together in the whole process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucian. We have noticed here two very significant ideas: granularity of the curriculum and the sense of belonging. It's so important to take on board for designing new European degrees as well. Nadia, I could also ask you the same questions related to the students and the integration of the new innovative pedagogies in building the new programs, taking into account the civic experiences, because all programs which are launched and designed in civics are linked with one or two experiences in the innovative pedagogies designed by the handbook, which has been coordinated by Lucian and his team. Nadia, the floor is yours.
Yes, I totally agree with Lucian. The pandemic, for example, has increased the use of technology and has favored the digital and technological based competence, not only to deliver teaching, but also to support and assist the students and to provide new forms of students' assessments. So they not only study of their own pace, but they participate in their own pace. So I think we need, as Lucian was saying, to consolidate and integrate these new pedagogical trends into the programs and have a great opportunity to be much more inclusive and to favor the digital transition for the benefits of all the students. I think inclusiveness is an opportunity linked to modularizations, because it's allow also to increase the mobility in all its forms. It could be physical, but also blended on just online. So this flexible curricula we are talking enable students, I mean, to take modules from different disciplines, from different institutions, on from different type of mobilities. And I think it's really important from the side of the students we have an opportunity to be much more inclusive, to help students with financial issues, economic issues to help them to participate in higher education in all its forms. So, and we have also this Bologna frame, which allows us the credit transfer between institutions. So students can move nationally, but also internationally with these modular systems. And I think it's really important to count on them because they are really willing, as we are seeing in many events, to participate of their own curricula. They have really great ideas.
Thank you very much, Nadia. It's interesting, and you have touched on an interesting connection with the mobility, because the process of starting with virtual mobility, and all the people from the audience probably have been confronted with the same problem during the pandemic time. We have been forced by the reality to move to virtual mobility, but we have been also aware that our students are just sending a message that virtual mobility could not replace the physical one and the traditional one, and this is why we try to reinvent some sort of mobilities for developing and integrated. And we are promoting something which is called, and we have used this one, embedded mobility, as part of the designing process of the new curricula, new European degrees. And I've just raised the question if this new degree could be based also in the forms of embedded mobility. Sometimes the new European curricula, the European degrees, could also integrate some periods for our students when they are having another way of mobility. And we have on the chat questions. Yes, it's related to, we have received related to the non-traditional support, also the inclusion of the non-traditional students, such as those linked with lifelong learning and reprofessionalization process. Thank you very much for this question, Alexandro. And I will start with the first one related to the mobility, and then we are going with the new one related to the traditional, non-traditional students. Would you like Lucian or Nadia or Lucia to add something? Lucian, please.
Okay. For now, the situation for the universities is still, let's say, balanced in a way when it comes about this need to address different categories. Of course, the different universities started to open to a larger and to a smaller extent towards lifelong learning and non-traditional students. But if I look at least in our country, I'm not talking about the whole Europe, but if I look in our country to the evolution of demographics on the one side, to the needs of the society on the other side, I think that this is not a question if to do it or not to do it. It's rather a question when we are doing it to a larger scale. We receive every day here in the university questions from different citizens, I would call them, who ask us, can I take a course in your university? I don't want to enroll, I don't want any certificate, I just want to hear, to discuss or to attend a specific course or a specific activity. So when it comes to this, I believe that, as you have mentioned earlier, Romiță, when we look to a different granularity of the curriculum, this granularity would allow us not to be more flexible just for our students and for internationalization, which is a huge asset and a huge advantage. But it will allow us to open up really the university and to transform it in what you also have mentioned, in university without walls, to make university experience and knowledge available basically for everyone. You know, we do in Romania, and I'm sure colleagues are doing in other places, we call it university for kids, and we open up university for small ages and so on. Now it is time not to have projects of 1 week or of 2 weeks doing that. It should be the new way of life in the university. And it is not that I'm saying it as a must. We will get, my opinion is that if I look to the decision and policy side on one hand, and if I look also to the way the society evolves every day, I think that it is something that is just going to happen anyway. And it is up to us if we get ready for it, and if we take it on board as a, how should I say, as a normal change, or if we try to oppose and we try to find all kind of classical resistance to change that everyone is finding all across the world, and we will just delay the process. And if we delay the process, I don't want to find ourselves again in the position that sociologists say that university is one of the most conservative institutions in the public sphere. So maybe this time we have a chance to prove the opposite.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Lucian. Thank you very much. Before starting the last round of answers from Nadia and Lucia, just a short notice, the participants are kindly asked to share with us the feedback on the event before leaving this session by filling out a short evaluation survey, which is on the chat sent by Laura. Thank you very much. Nadia and Lucia, and that will be the wrap up and final, the close session. Thank you very much.
Nadia, what are you on about? I want to say something about mobility. What about you?
I want just to say something about how modularization can balance studies with employment and family, which I think for students or anyone who can take, these courses, as Romița was pointing out, it's really important, because we are not talking about, traditional degrees, even in semesters. So we are talking about, the possibility to be flexible to the point to move part-time, full-time, and to foster mobility, because it's easier when you are following a module with different courses, with less ECTS, an amount of hours. It's also easier to move for only 3 or 4 weeks to another country than move for the whole year or even for 4 months. So from the point of view of the, less wealthy, from the economic point of view, I think we have a great opportunity. So I'll let you the floor, Lucia.
Thank you. And where mobility is concerned, and what you said earlier on, Romița, I think what we have to look at in creating something new is, yes, on the one hand, students said, okay, but virtual mobility is not something we want to have only as virtual mobility, because some of the experience gets lost. But on the other hand, we have to allow students to have an international experience who cannot travel for abroad for various reasons. We have a lot of them, whether it's money-wise, whether it's because of children and the disability, whatever. Yeah, so when we are looking at the future, we have to find a way to incorporate, so to speak, all these needs and expectations. And therefore, I think we need all of these things. We need to have something, where you are on site, where we have blended mobility, but we also need virtual mobility. And whether it's a sort of traditional degree program in the sense of that it's throughout the year, or whether we have the more flexible pathways we are already experiencing and piloting, what we have to have a look at is how to incorporate that. And then, as Nadia said, as we all have different term times, we cannot go ahead with our programs as we have been doing so far. We will have to change for that reason as well. So only looking at the framework, we cannot use the same framework because we are not all part to just one framework. And with the innovative pedagogies, with the ideas our students have, and we already have experience with sharing ideas with our students and putting those things into practice, it will take a little while. I mean, I'm not sort of, a person who says we'll have it next year, but maybe we all will see that within the next 5 years, we have changed really a lot incorporating all the various criteria that were mentioned by Lucian and Nadia?
Thank you very, very much, Lucia. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. It was a real privilege for me to facilitate and to moderate this panel with outstanding speakers. And as you have seen, for the very beginning of this event, we are starting with Livius Matei interventions, positioning our perspective in between the politics and the pedagogies, education. And it was very interesting because sometimes European alliances and European universities initiative has been a little bit accused by the orientation towards the political interest. And I'm not in favor with this interpretation, but we just try to demonstrate the opposite perspective of this assumption. Then we are introducing perspective of your personal institutional learning experience during the pandemic time and during the designing the process of European degrees. It was the second part, and the third one was dedicated to a deep reflection with the people already experienced in this area of designing, validating, confronted with some obstacles, some problems which are, of course, appearing in the process of implementing and the dynamics which is not under control. We would like very much to express our gratitude to you all for being with us. We have been aware that in parallel you have been connected with the other event organized, the forum organized by the European Commission. But I'm very happy that at the end we are keeping the people interested, motivated, and of course the message from the UNICA, from the main organizers EduLab, and from the CIVIS partners, and also from the University of Bucharest contributors, are that we are making some few steps forward. We are aware that this topic is not very easy. We are realizing that we need in this moment to have a glossary. A lot of terminology is just appearing, and we are not having the same semantics in this process of building and taking into account. And I'm sure that we are just embracing together by playing an important role, UNICA, EduLab, and of course CIVIS as well, to advise and to give good example for practice which could enrich your experiences. And because we have 1 minute left, it's my pleasure to express my gratitude to wonderful team, Laura Brosico, Vicky Chonka, Alexandra Duarte, Laura Colo from the UNICA's EduLab. This is called infrastructure, but sometimes we have in mind how so important it is to have reliable person very close to you all, and especially for me was a privilege. And special thanks are going to in this moment to Livius Matei for insightful and very interesting challenging presentations, and also last but not the least to Luciano Sasso. He is with us, and I'm very grateful for supporting and enriching the EduLab, and now to celebrate another meeting of EduLab at the beginning of December. Dear colleagues, special guests, thank you very much for being with us, for your contribution, for your thoughts, but more for your reflections, which are probably in this moment focused on your practices in your institutions and your alliances as well. Thank you very much, and don't forget, you are kindly asked to fill in this moment a questionnaire, also to download, if you like, the James board with some concrete examples. And the next event of UNICA will be open to you all. And next CIVIS event will be also open to you all by sending after this meeting and also send our best wishes before Christmas holiday, and stay healthy and close to what's happened in the European